Hello, I'm Susan Nash, AAPG, and we have a very exciting and highly anticipated webinar today. Our focus is geothermal energy powering data centers and communities. Before I introduce the speakers, I just want to mention that this is going to be promoting an event that we will have January 7th and 8th in Houston, and it's essentially the name of it is Subsurface Energy to Power. And we will be talking about how we are accelerating all kinds of subsurface energy to meet the rising demand for electricity and power. And so, in addition to looking at geothermal in January, we will be looking at natural gas, we'll be looking at uranium and lithium and hydrogen and even sand that's used in data center construction. But the whole goal is to see how do we, as geologists and geoscientists and engineers, come together to look at resources to get to accelerating the capacity of our grid. And so today we're focusing on geothermal energy. And if you have any questions, please go to the chat. We're not in the chat, I'm sorry, the Q&A, and put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll get to those at the end. Also, if you'd like to know more about our workshop, please go to the chat and you'll see a link there. So that's nice. And I also want to mention that you will be receiving an email with a link to the recording, so you can watch it on demand, and you can also share it with anybody who might be interested. So just to get right to it, I'd like to introduce our speakers, and I'll be introducing them in the order that they will be presenting. So first we have Krisha Tracy, who's a strategic business developer of Amazon Web Services. And then we have Shuajit Batacharia, who's a research associate professor at BEG in the University of Texas. And then we'll have Kristen Marcia, who's president of Deep Earth Energy, and she's joining us from Canada. So we have two people joining us from Texas and one from Canada. So we're international anyway. So thank you and welcome, Krisha.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. Yes, I'm Krisha Tracy. I am a principal strategic business developer at AWS, and my role is a little unique. I work within the energy business unit at AWS, but my role is to work with the energy companies and find opportunities for them to work with other areas of Amazon. We call it Pan Amazon. So many times I'm working with energy companies and finding energy sources for our data centers, and that's the majority of my work. And just by background, I'll also share I am a geologist. I worked for many years, for 19 years now in the energy industry. And a lot of my work has always gravitated back towards geothermal. This is definitely an area where I have a lot of passion in and would love to see things, advancements and innovation in this space for the clean energy. And so my role today my purpose today is to provide some perspective from a data center, for the energy procurement for our data centers and what we're looking for in the geothermal space. Our commitment in 2019, we co-founded the Climate Pledge with Global Optimism. The Climate Pledge is Amazon's commitment to be net zero carbon emissions by 2040. The power of this pledge is that it's bringing together the world's top companies so that we can accelerate in a joint action, cross-sector collaboration and responsible change. And hopefully, that's what I see this platform today. Another commitment here is, we're looking for change. We're looking for innovation for low carbon, zero carbon energy solutions. Now, we've invested in over 600 wind and solar projects We are the largest corporate purchaser of renewable energy globally for 5 years running now. And in 2024, Amazon, we've signed 4 nuclear agreements, and we have 100% of electricity matched by renewable energy in 2023. And going forward, we are also working on, in 2025, we've been working on geothermal contracts and looking for geothermal energy for our data centers. So AWS data centers power, we power the cloud infrastructure behind everything from streaming services to AI applications. Each of our data center facilities requires between 20 and 100 plus megawatts of continuous, reliable electricity. With AI driving exponential growth, our power needs are doubling. Traditional renewables like solar and wind, those are intermittent, as I'm sure everybody on this call knows. And we're requiring massive battery storage to provide that reliability that we need. And so meanwhile, we've committed to achieving the net zero carbon by 2040, and powering our operations with renewable energy. So if we look at the data center energy challenges as a whole, we've got we require massive amounts of energy. In many of the contracts that I've been looking at, and the data centers that are going up around the United States, we're looking at least a gig, sometimes 2 or more gigs of power for those data centers. And so while this slide here says 20 to 100, maybe many times this is going way beyond that. If we look at the global power demand for data centers, it is projected to almost double by 2030. And so the demand is increasing, and this also goes this goes down to the AI type of workloads. These are transforming the data centers and the energy that is needed. It's very intensive. It's intermittent. It creates the types of AI workloads can be rather volatile, and so we are also looking at lots of innovation for the harmonic distortions and the base load power. Many different challenges present themselves with the types of workloads that come from powering an AI type data center. Now, in addition to that, the other challenges that we face from a data center provider as a hyperscaler, such as Amazon or AWS, is reliability. So we're looking for the 5 nines, which is data centers. We need 24/7 base load power, and if we look at the wind and the solar, it doesn't meet that 24/7 baseload power. But when we look at geothermal and nuclear, that's the type of baseload power that we're looking for. Now, the other challenges that have been very disruptive is the grid infrastructure. There are many constraints, many delays for interconnection to the grids around the United States. There's limited data there in many of these regions for what's needed to be able to properly forecast for the energy demand. Lots of bottlenecks that are happening in this space. A lot of long lead times for the electrical equipment, and sometimes when we're looking at who's going to provide the power for proposed data center, have they even gone through the long lead equipment procurement? What is the interconnection to the grid look like? So many challenges happen specifically in this space. It's not just about finding power, but it's also about the delivery of that power. So just to give a very high level perspective about what we're looking for, and what the requirements are for data centers. You can see it right here. I'm not getting into lots of details on this slide. That's to come when we meet back in January. So this is a preview for, what we're looking for from an Amazon perspective. We need reliability. It has to provide that baseload dispatchable power, high capacity. So we need we're looking for the 5 nines, if you will, right there. On the capacity side, we, sometimes in the geothermal space, the capacity could be on the lower side, but that may be just what we need for that baseload power. So 20 to 100 megawatts to match the data center loads. And these data centers are going to be demanding a lot of energy. And so investing in companies that can provide the level of capacity that we're looking for. Speed is also really, really important. We have data centers that are being investigated and proposed in so many different places. And, how can we get there fastest? How can we get there cheapest? And how can we get there with the lowest carbon emissions possible? So the timeline is very important, what's possible. And we look forward in many of our investments and our collaborations, what types of technology are going to be able to scale, and how can we replicate this in other areas. In the geothermal space, traditionally we've been confined to tectonically active zones, areas that where we're being confined geologically. And so right now we're investigating and looking at technology that is going to be able to provide this baseload power, clean energy anywhere. We want to be able to say, if I want to have power in my backyard, that we can do this. And so those are the types of investments that we're making. And it's always important to look at the risk management. We need a balanced portfolio of what is working today, but what could be working tomorrow, and how do we marry those two so that we have a more balanced approach of, all right, this works today, but we need the scalability, we need this timeline, we need capacity, and we need the reliability. So looking across all of these, that's where the risk management balance comes into play. Now, the way I see it, geothermal has always been the missing piece. It delivers 90% capacity factor, meaning that it's generating power continuously, day and night. It's that 24/7, regardless of weather. It's firm, dispatchable, and can be sited near the data centers that we're proposing to reduce transmission losses. Advanced technologies like enhanced geothermal systems and closed loop advanced geothermal systems, these unlock resources that go beyond the traditional geothermal regions, giving us the geographic flexibility to deploy where we are building our data centers. So the way I see it, and the way many of the teams that I work with at Amazon, geothermal is one of the keys for that baseload power, the ability to scale, the reliability that we're looking for, the sustainability elements that are very important to Amazon being net zero by 2040, and also having that geographic flexibility. So I appreciate everybody's time. I look forward to diving deeper on all of these points when we meet back in January. And I will hand this over to Suvajit.
Hey, thank you, everyone. My name is Shuajit Batacharia, and I'm a research associate professor at the Bureau of Economic Geology, UT Austin. I lead the geothermal program here. and Bureau functions as the State Geological Survey of Texas. We have been operating for the last 116 years. We work on energy, environment, and economics. And we work in Texas, but all other states and many other countries for various research projects as well. So coming back to geothermal, I mean, we know that the Earth has an abundant heat. The center of the Earth has like 6,000 degrees Celsius temperature, which is kind of similar to the sun. And if we can harness this abundant energy, we can power AI centers, data centers, and communities, and many other needs, as well as satisfy the demand for heating and cooling as well. So geothermal energy is a versatile, reliable, clean resource that you can use for various purposes. Recently, there have been quite a few studies that have been published on geothermal energy. For example, the future of geothermal energy published by IEA around this time of the last year. Then the connection between geothermal and data centers published by Rhodium Group as well as Fervo. And then we contributed to a study on the future of geothermal in Texas a couple of years ago. And it's with publicly available report and all that. It's a 400-page report, but it got a nice executive summary in a very simple language. So, like any other resource, there are three things that are really important to answer. It's like a trifecta. The first one, is the resource available? The second, is the resource accessible? And third, is the resource deliverable? To answer the question on availability, of resource availability, we need to understand the geology and the geophysics, create those maps. And then to answer accessibility, we need to implement these engineering technologies. And for deliverability, we need to have an infrastructure, the grid, the microgrids to distribute the power. Unlike oil and gas, in geothermal, we have to transport these electrons via the grid. And that's an important part of the equation as well. So now going back to the resource availability, one of the main attributes in geothermal is the subsurface temperature. So here is a temperature map that was published by SMU back in 2011. And so this is a temperature map at 5.5 kilometer depth. That's like 18,000 feet. And so if you look at this temperature map, the Western US has higher temperatures than many other areas. And traditionally, many geothermal industries like conventional geothermal has been developed in this part, Nevada, Utah, some parts of California, like geysers and others. But beyond that, there are many areas east of the Rockies and areas that are geothermally prospective, like Rio Grande Rift, that's continuing from Colorado, New Mexico, West Texas, the Gulf Coast region, and then parts in West Virginia or North Dakota. There are many other areas where you have this large untapped geothermal resources. And this is many of these places where people live, and there is existing energy, oil and gas infrastructure, there's knowledge, data, and as well as growing data centers as well. So, and as I mentioned that over the years, the traditional geothermal power plants have been developed in the Western US. Here are some of the examples from those states, which have been mostly islanded for a variety of reasons in those few states. Now, the question is, can geothermal work beyond east of the Rockies, right? And this is where people live, a lot of demand, a lot of existing infrastructure and all that. So one of the things that has been really addressed in the last couple of years is the technology as an enabler. Now, to understand this better, I will talk about what the technology we have used in the last 40, 50 years and how it has evolved over the time. So people use these conventional hydrothermal systems that are mainly driven by the convection cycles in permeable rocks, including faults. So you put an injector well and a producer well, inject cold water and produce the hot water. And the cycle goes on and on and on, right? And these are the systems that are well known in many of these settings in the Western US. But there are many challenges. One of the large challenge is that uncertainties in finding a viable target. Many times you find a non-producing geothermal well pretty close to a producing geothermal well. And that well may not have targeted the right the fault zone or target or a permeable reservoir. So there is uncertainties in the flow rate, fluid loss, and the mineral scaling. Over time, these systems develop deposits of silica, calcite, and that reduces your flow rate over the time. So these are some of the challenges. So now to address this, in the last 5 or 6 years, there are many geothermal startups. They came up with new ideas, thanks to oil and gas industry as well, and they came up with new approaches for EGS, like enhanced geothermal systems, or closed loop systems, or even thermal storage. For EGS, people are drilling this, they are going deeper, drilling hot, dry rocks, and creating a fracture network through which they can circulate the fluid and produce the hot water. And there are companies who are already experimenting these things, for example, Farvo. And then you got closed loop systems where people don't want to interact with the formation fluid at all. So to reduce the chance of fluid loss as well as to minimize the risk of induced seismicity. And so in this case, people are drilling single well coaxial or multi-well U-tube kind of system and inject and basically circulating their working fluid throughout that chamber. We also have this thermal storage. This is another kind of technology which is becoming more popular. And there are demonstrations happening in Texas, thermal storage or pressure storage, where you can integrate with other renewables like solar or wind and capture that excess heat from that or even waste heat. And you basically store that in the reservoir that could be depleted oil and gas reservoir, and then you discharge it when there is a need for power. So these are the different technologies that have been addressed. And with these different technologies and new learnings and field tests, the drilling cost is getting reduced and people are learning lessons, improving on their tests and all that. So, but there is another element, which is another impediment to wide scale or widespread adoption of geothermal, which is the price of power. Now, and that's the way, one of the ways it's handled is by the PPAs, like the power purchase agreement. Here's a table that shows the PPA price for 20-25-year long projects in solar and storage across multiple projects in different states. And if you look at the PPA price for the solar, it kind of varies between $15 per megawatt hour to around 24-25 megawatt hour. It can be flat or flexible depending on the project complexities and whatever the need is. That's the number, 15 to 25. If I come to geothermal, based on the PPAs that have been published with the actual price point, so these are the figures. So for some of the geothermal projects in the Western US, we're talking like, 60 to 75 or even $100 per megawatt hour. And that's a very important part of this game, that having access to attractive PPA can help ground many of this, break ground for many of these projects. So what can you do in the near to mid-term? Of course, so one of the options is geothermal as a farm base load, producing for 50, 100 megawatt power, where we know these known systems are already existing. But then the other option is those areas where there is this large untapped or untested potential. We can take a step-by-step approach. And the option could be like adding geothermal to the energy mix, like in the blend. We can go with the natural gas, like gas-fired plant for now, but add geothermal to add more reliability. And as you know, there are times when during ice storms or tropical storms, for example, that happened in Texas, that these gas pipelines froze. And those are the times geothermal can be a really good, reliable resource. Apart from the energy mix, it can be used as a backup power, like the solar and wind. These are intermittent resources. They are not reliable. So you can use the geothermal or even thermal storage as a backup power and produce when the sun doesn't shine at the night or wind doesn't blow, right? So other example is there are several military bases across the US and many other countries. So we can use geothermal as a reliable, resilient power behind the fence line. and it can supply this 24/7 power for those military bases. We have done many projects with the Defense Innovation Unit and say Geosystems in the last couple of years. And the idea is that we can implement many of these technologies, and then these military bases can serve as a springboard to commercialize those engineering prototypes, because the rocks don't stop at the fence lines. It's continuous across the geography, right? So, but then beyond power, there's also a large demand for cooling these data centers, heating or cooling as well. So you can use geothermal to meet this thermal demand. So we at Hot Rock, our consortium, we are actively studying many of these scenarios: farm-based load or blended resource, backup power, military bases, and all that. Here are some examples that I'm going to show you in the next few slides. We have mapped the thermal demand in Texas, where this heating and cooling demand is coming from many different kind of sectors, from refineries on the Gulf Coast, for data centers in the Dallas region, or agriculture, different kinds of agriculture, what kind of heating demand that they have. And then trying to match the geothermal resource map with the surface heating and cooling demand, and knowing what are those areas where we can implement geothermal to realize the value of it beyond power. Now, to accelerate further development of geothermal, what we have done, at the Bureau, we have initiated a state-funded project, Texas Imperative of Geothermal Resources. It has been done in conjunction with many other resources, including hydrogen, helium, critical minerals, and water, and all that. So, and I'm leading the geothermal part of that program. And so the idea is to conduct detailed geothermal resource mapping and assessment on the Gulf Coast and East Texas. And we're going to look at all these kind of geothermal possibilities, including conventional systems and next gen like EGS, closed loop, thermal storage, as well as cogeneration of hydrocarbons, and as well as critical minerals like lithium. So now, and here is a temperature map in the region, modified after SMU's data. And that's a map that is being shown here on the Gulf Coast in East Texas. Some areas with higher temperatures in East Texas and South Texas. Here is our new map. So if you look at this new map, there are many areas that has this high temperature formations that have been popping out now, most in East Texas as well as South Texas, and many other regions that were not visible before. And so these maps can boost further confidence in operators, the investors, to power geothermal, to help facilitate, accelerate geothermal development across the state and many other places. So beyond this temperature mapping, we are also creating these overlays of the subsurface and the technology layers for creating these structure maps, temperature maps, porosity, permeability, and creating the play fairway maps for various kinds of technologies, conventional systems, EGS, thermal storage. And these technologies have different attributes. So the areas you find EGS may not always correlate with the areas you find hydrothermal systems. So this can help an operator to know what kind of technologies fit for purpose for their kind of need, and meeting the demand for the data centers, or powering communities or semiconductor factories and other things. So we really think that Texas is ready to lead the geothermal energy revolution in the coming years, because of many different reasons: for existing energy companies, existing infrastructure, oil and gas infrastructure, knowledge and workforce, and as well as growing demand from AI and data centers, and the potential for co-production of resources that includes hydrocarbons, lithium, as well as hot brine. And there's a great academic support from the universities here, including University of Texas. So we have been supported by many of these companies and entities for our projects. And thank you to any questions. And you can scan this QR code and go to our website to learn more about what we are doing.
just a quick note that, well, Kristen's getting her slides ready, that we have two sponsors. We have Halliburton and GSI Environmental, and a big thank you to both of them. So Kristen, I think you need to put it in. There we go. Perfect.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me all right. Pleasure to be here. I'm excited to provide an update on our Canadian geothermal project. We've made some enormous advances and we've expanded the scope quite a bit. So for those of you that don't know where we're located, our project is right along the United States border. We're a sedimentary geothermal project in the Williston Basin. Those of you that aren't familiar with Williston Basin, it hosts the famous Bakken Formation, which has produced an enormous amount of oil for North Dakota and Saskatchewan. We're conventional geothermal in that we're not doing any closed loop systems or anything like that. What's unique about our project is the well design. We had initially planned to drill these wells down to 3,500 meters to produce 120 degrees Celsius fluids. But using vertical wells, we discovered that we were a bit limited in our productivity. And so thanks to the oil and gas industry, who we were working alongside, we converted to horizontal wells. So now all of the wells are going to be drilled horizontally, like a rib cage. We discovered once we started drilling a horizontal well that this just wasn't very common in geothermal. So it's a unique aspect of our project, but it's conventional in the fact that we are just producing 120 degrees Celsius fluids at enormous rates to have an economic project. We've changed the scope quite a bit, and here's a bit of our story. We had some fun at Geothermal Rising in Reno, a month and a half ago, sharing our story. We're very open and transparent about our project. It's something that we think the industry requires to advance our projects. We were given our brine. Our brine is terrible stuff. It's worse than the Salton Sea. It's forced us to run a polymer-coated tubing string inside the well bore or go to titanium or something like that. And it really drove the cost up. And so we were struggling, we'll be honest, we were struggling to make the economics work on standalone geothermal. And so thanks to the fact that we're an oil and gas country and we've got a pipeline of natural gas not far from us, it became clear that to get this project to the finish line, we were going to become a hybrid and we were going to use some natural gas to blend out the cost. And we're right in a field that requires CO2 for enhanced oil recovery. So not only we can capture economics on selling this hybrid power, but we also have customers that want our CO2. At 1,200 tons per day of capture, we're going to be able to produce 1 million barrels of oil using enhanced oil recovery. So it's a really unique evolution in this project where we're going to be producing 140 megawatts of essentially non-emitting baseload reliable power that's going to support our traditional oil and gas sector. We're really proud of it. We're proud that we live in the province of Saskatchewan that supports our resource development, and it gets this project commercial. Here we are, we've got all the infrastructure in place. We're going to be building more and more geothermal, but we get the natural gas infrastructure in, as one of my colleagues likes to say, it's training wheels for geothermal. It provides the affordability and the reliability that our province is demanding. Just some background here in Saskatchewan, all of our utilities are owned by the government. So we call them the Crown Corporation. So that's Sask Power, SaskTel, Sask Energy. You get the drift. So the affordability is so important because it is the voting people, the people that are casting their votes for government are the same people that are also paying the power bill. So it just does not fly to have an expensive project. We had to listen. We had to listen to our government and deliver a project that made sense. We could not just die on the hill with an expensive geothermal project. We had to get it there, and we're really excited about it, and our province is really excited about it. So we're now working with SaskPower to develop that PPA. We've all stacked hands on the range of the pricing that we can all live with. So we're not expecting any glitches there. And given the economics, given that the power purchase price and the sale of the CO2, we can now reach the economics and the leverage and the hurdle rates that will meet the investor expectations. It also helps that we're a large project now. I mean, 140 megawatts is significant. It actually gets more interest than trying to develop a small project. Some of these slides I used recently with our provincial government, so that affordable, reliable, and significant economic impact. These are the things that really, really resonated with our government. Yes, they're excited about non-emitting, but it's those three components that are key in this project. We have already invested over $50 million into the project. We know it's going to work. We've done extensive drilling and testing. This is not just, a half-baked idea. We're ready to roll. We're ready to construct. It's going to be a significant, have $1 billion of economic impact to Southeast Saskatchewan, in an area that really almost solely relies on agriculture and oil production. We're capturing, as I think I mentioned already, 1,200 tons per day of CO2, which produces 1 million barrels of oil. And again, because of the regulatory environment, that's a lot of revenues that comes into the government of Saskatchewan too. So another reason to support the project. Yes, we're focused in Saskatchewan today. This is our home turf. But man, are we ever excited to deploy this same hybrid concept in other sedimentary basins. So yeah, we're coming for you, Texas. Just wait, we'll be there soon. We also have some goodies in our brine. We have some lithium. We have strontium. We actually have a ton of strontium. It's really interesting. Strontium is used in like guided missile, like when you have the bullets with the tracer kind of stuff. Anyways, it's all produced in China. We don't produce any in North America right now, and to my understanding. And so the fact that we could produce, some additional minerals out of this brine that has given us such a headache would be a nice change. We're also positioned with a company in British Columbia that is a majority owned by Dole that's interested in partnering with us to build a 20-acre greenhouse. It's interesting. That strawberry will taste exactly the same as that strawberry produced in British Columbia. But the idea, in the marketing when we buy our produce is that it's heated by geothermal, it's powered by geothermal. We have a CO2 supply that will pump into the greenhouse, and it has that, Western Canadian branding that people seem to like. Yeah, and really, it's for Western Canada, this is such a great project that has seen so much support from Ottawa. It is a project that has partnered hand in hand with the oil and gas sector while developing a clean, renewable energy project. Just to give you a little idea of how this is going to be developed, the first geothermal block will be gross 30 megawatts, netting out at 23. There'll be natural gas. We're going to be building 124 megawatts of natural gas. And there'll be some combined cycle generation as well, so that we get to that 140. Then as we build out more and more geothermal, we're going to be consuming more and more natural gas behind the fence. So we're going to be using the natural gas to run our parasitic loads. So by the time we get to 200 megawatts, we're almost pure geothermal that's getting exported to the grid. That was important to me. That was, this is the goal. We're a geothermal company, not a natural gas company. It's interesting though, from the province's perspective, they don't care. They want reliable, affordable, baseload power. But this is how deep we'll be developing this project. The CO2 component of this project, I think, is quite compelling. I just want to point out this This purple line, here's our project in the yellow. This is our well traces. We have 12 production, 10 injection wells to get our 30 megawatts. So this is looking down. Of course, you're seeing the horizontal component of our wells. But this is the North Dakota Gasification Company's pipeline that brings CO2 from North Dakota up to Whitecap Resources for enhanced oil recovery. This contract is over in 2027, meaning that there is no CO2 coming up from North Dakota starting in 2 years. So the fact that we can provide that CO2 to support the Weyburn Enhanced Oil Field is a pretty, I guess it's just pretty convenient that we're located right next to that pipeline. We have partnered with SLB in a number of ways. We're partnering with them in their integrated well services and some of their core competencies in Western Canada, of course, like things like wireline logging, their wellheads, their Cameron wellheads, a number of things. But this partnership, albeit in that component, is new. You know, we date back to geothermics from the very beginning. And so it was a couple of years ago that geothermics, who's owned by SLB, signed off that our first 30 megawatt block would support power for more than 40 years. That was a big deal for us. We were very proud of the fact that we've designed a field that has a nice, gentle, clean sweep of power that will be sustainable for the long haul. There, and I'll wrap up here, but this is our cute little cartoon of what the facility will look like. Of course, the greenhouse under number 4, that is not to scale, but it just gives you an idea of, you know, where this is the sum is equal to more of the parts, and that we've got the geothermal, we've got natural gas generation, we've got carbon capture on this facility that will support oil production right at the same postal code or zip code. Sorry, talking to the United States. It's the same zip code. It really is a nice project where everything goes around to make the project more affordable, more reliable, and produce more energy. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you. That's amazing. And we have an incredible level of engagement. And so I don't know how we're going to get to all the questions. So I just want to say, if we don't get to your question, or if it's extremely specific and it would take a long time to answer, please send an email to education at aapg.org. And also right now I'd like to invite Shuajit and Krisha to turn on their cameras too, and we'll go to the Q&A. So one of the top questions was, how many data centers are run now with geothermal, and how many are planned?
Well, I'll jump in there. So at the moment, we do not have any data centers that are running solely off of geothermal. It is an initiative that we are actively pursuing and exploring what the ideal solution is for a geothermal solution is for the data centers in the upcoming areas that we have identified where we need new data centers. And as you know, I mean, the technology as it exists today is a bit limiting, and that's why we are investing in solutions that have potential to scale geologically beyond tectonically active zones.
Oh, nice. So to kind of build on that, there was a question that asked, how much can geothermal that's used for cooling and heating be used in conjunction with that's just like geothermal for power?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Amazon, we have a lot of facilities, a lot of distribution centers. It's not just our data centers. We have a lot of buildings in general. And so, yes, we do have active projects for procuring, HVAC geothermal, if you will, for those facilities. There are some limiting factors that we've encountered, from a regional perspective, utility companies and whatnot. And so those projects are ongoing. And again, this is definitely a space where we need policy, we need better policies. We need, there's a lot of work that can still be done in this space for HVAC, geothermal, for a lot of the buildings that not just Amazon has, but so many different companies have around the world.
Excellent. That's great. Okay, so kind of building on that, there were some questions having to do with both the hybrid solution that Kristen described and also the deep but like Gulf Coast Texas wells that Shubhajit described. And so first of all, there were a number of questions that addressed the cost of wells in the Gulf Coast and how economic are they and how productive are they in terms of generating electricity?
Let me answer this question. There was a really good question on the within historical context. And in the 1980s, Bureau of Economic Geology, we were part of a DOE funded study. We drilled 2 wells, the Pleasant Bayou, 16,000 feet depth, and it co-produced methane with 1 megawatt of power. That's 1980s. 45 years, move on to 45 years fast forward, we have those technologies have been improved a lot. So even if we reuse those technologies, we can produce more power. Now here we are talking about hundreds of megawatt, right? And the question is, let me ask this: if the conventional systems worked in Texas, why we don't see a single operating power plant today? So that's a very important question, and the reason is that because we don't have enough flow rate from these wells, and that's one of the biggest challenges. Some of the areas they might be more localized, that you have the high flow rate, but not everywhere. So that's why this next gen geothermal is so important to implement, field test, and scale them, and basically go drill deeper, hot, dry rocks. That could be EGS, that could be closed loop systems and whatnot. And different rocks are ideal for different kind of systems. And for to do that now, we're talking like 10 megawatt per each well, right? With that range. And so we've, based on many of the studies we have done, we have found that one of the critical factors that we all understand is thermal longevity. It's not about producing 2 megawatt today, but can it sustain for the next 20, 30 years of the time? To sustain thermal longevity, you need to target at least around, based on today's water-based technologies, around 200 degrees Celsius. And to attain that temperature, we need to go around, let's say, around 5.5 kilometers. I mean, around 16,000 feet depth. That's the kind of depth we are finding out across many places. But keep in mind that many oil and gas companies today, they drill the pretty deep wells in Haynesville in East Texas, pretty high temperature pressure wells, as well as lower Eagle Ford and many other areas. So the oil and gas companies have this knowledge. Now, there are many other interesting issues, and that's how geothermal is similar and different than oil and gas. Now, fracking at 5.5 kilometer depth is something very interesting, right? By EGS, we don't need to create as intensive fracture like we do in oil and gas. It can be just connecting 2 wells by a fracture network. So your completions intensity should be much, much less than you do in a regular oil and gas industry. So of course you can balance your cost estimate, even though you drill deeper. And the other part is that unlike shale gas and shale gas wells that depletes very fast, people think about re-drilling or refracking these geothermal wells every 5 to 7 years instead of every 1 or 2 years. So that way we can come around this, and we can reduce the number of deep wells to be drilled, and use fit for purpose technology. So again, there is space for conventional systems, but next generation systems are important to accelerate in the sedimentary basins.
Really interesting and great answer. So, Kirsten, we had a few questions for you too. And a lot of people were really excited about the hybrid approach, and they wanted to know how many wells you've drilled and what are the flow rates?
So we've drilled, I see 6.5 because one was a whipstock, so kind of like got 2 for 1 there. We drilled 6.5 wells. One actually quite fun, like right along the U.S. border. Like we went to to get to the well location, you drove to the border. You waved to the border guard. You gave her the Tim Hortons coffee, and then drove along the highly secure barbed wire fence line to our well lease. But anyways, that's just fun. We've done some long-term testing. I think our longest test we did for 54 days, producing at, I think we're producing at 2,000 barrels a day. But the plan for the production wells and injection wells, those will average at about 65 liters per second. Sorry, I'm going through different units here, but I don't know what that is in barrels right now. But yes, about 65 liters per second. So these are big wells. And again, it was mentioned it's about that flow rate, right? I mean, so the wells will be drilled open hole completions. We did drill a horizontal and completed it and did a 20-stage multi-frac on it. That's still an option for us, but what we learned in the fracking is that because of the cost, we were actually better off to reduce the spacing between the wells and eliminate the frac. So under the frac design, they were at a kilometer distance apart. We're now at 500 meters with an open hole completion. So yeah, horizontal, 65 liters per second.
And how deep are they?
3,500 meters
Okay.
with another 3,000 meter horizontal leg. So
Okay, perfect.
total,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, excellent. And how much, okay, so I think this is for you and also for Shuajit. How many megawatts per hour? What was the megawatt production?
So it'll produce gross 30 megawatts,
Mhm.
doing 12 production, 10 injection wells.
Okay, great. And Shuajit, what are the projections for the 16,000 foot wells?
So, in terms of the megawatt power being produced,
Yes, and
yeah, I
also
mean,
the
what you
cost.
have found that, I mean, for single well injector producer with that kind of EGS or closed loop setting up to 10 megawatt per well pair. Yeah. But then that's about for next 20 to 30 years. Yeah.
Right, okay. And what is the cost for the initial well?
That's a good question, actually. I have to check. We had a publication, the AAPG bulletin this year. So
Oh,
depending
wow,
on what kind of
yes.
style, if it is EGS versus closed loop, if you are using a casing in the horizontal section or not, there are a lot of variations. It's not just one specific cost. Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned the article. So shout out to the bulletin. We had a special geothermal uh, themed issue. So if you're a member, you can access that right away. And if you're not a member, you can join and have access. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so there's a question. How about developing the geopressured fairway in Texas? There's a lot of it's been well characterized.
So that's a really good question. And as I said that, I mean, back in the 80s, I mean, Bureau did a lot of work on the geopressure geothermal system, the Frio, Wilcox, and all of that.
Mhm.
And in fact, the Pleasant Bayou wells are basically geopressure geothermal, an example. So there are companies I know that are still trying to do that thing in Texas. And as a part of our Texas Imperative project, where we are looking at both conventional as well as next generation systems, geopressure geothermal is a part of the game, and we do see there are some areas where we can see these highly prospective areas where we can develop this geopressure geothermal systems. Yeah.
Excellent. So we have a question for you, Kristen. A few years back, well, basically the question is, have you solved the issue of heat loss during the production of the fluids?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're producing at such high volumes and high rates that the well bore will equilibrate. We're basically going to heat up the surrounding rock within a month. Like we'll get to that 120 degrees Celsius really, really quickly. So the bottom hole temperature will be the same as the surface.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
That's a very interesting phenomenon. Um, okay, now here are a few questions for Krisha, and quite a few people have asked about what Amazon is willing to pay for geothermal PPA. So is Amazon willing to pay a premium for geothermal PPAs?
I can't comment on that, but price is important. It's still one of the important levers that we look at when we're looking at whole solutions. And so, if it doesn't fit within the constraints that have been set forth by leadership, then it's not an avenue that we can go down.
Okay.
Affordability, reliability.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
and time.
Yeah.
I mean, it really comes, I had several things out on my slides, but it really does come down to those three elements.
Excellent. Well, we have many, many additional questions, and there's just no way to get to all of them. So please email any questions that you'd like us to forward to the presenters. And again, it's education@aapg.org. And for our last few minutes, I'd just like to go around to each person and say, if you have a few last minute comments after hearing all the questions and each other's presentations. So I'd like to start with you, Krisha.
Several questions or comments. I'm sorry.
Or comments, fine. After hearing all the questions and reading questions and hearing the other presenters, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yeah, this is and I was saying this earlier, whenever I'm having conversations just in general around, what we're looking for at Amazon for energy, it comes down to a lot of folks are very, very interested in learning the different areas and the requirements that we have. And so I'm happy to share more information and help others understand those the embodiment of those constraints and how we can work together, where we're willing to invest, where other companies that we partner with are willing to invest, because the only way that we're going to move forward in this geothermal space is by working together. What is needed, what the demand is, and how can we meet that demand? There are brilliant minds here on this call that are listening, that are presenting. And when we all come together, we're going to be able to move the needle in the geothermal space. And I only think that we can do this together. So I'm super happy for you, Susan, and for the team for putting this together, because we have to collaborate.
Well, thank you. Wonderful. Shubhajit, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, thanks for organizing. And it was a really good panel and the presentations, and thanks to the attendees. A lot of really great questions. And as I said, that to move the needle, we need to think about the entire system. Is the resource available? Is it accessible? Is it deliverable? And if you can answer those three questions integrated in a cohesive way and in an economic way, that is what is going to move the needle. And so you need to all work together. Happy to support your projects. We are in Austin, with the university. We work with everyone or many of the projects and try to support this industry.
Thank you.
And I have actually put, someone asked about the Hot Rock website link. I just put it in the chat box.
Excellent. Perfect. And Kirsten, a few final words?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity to reach out to your association and be part of this. And I also want to say just thank you to the geothermal industry for supporting our hybrid vision. We're really coming at this as we just need more energy. We need more clean energy. This is an all of the above approach that's also going to produce more traditional energy. And so we're grateful for the support.
Well, thank you. Well, great job. And I want to thank all of our attendees also and encourage you to go to the chat, click on the link, and check out the full program for January 7th and 8th in Houston. It's truly amazing. We have thought leaders just as we have today and the same thought leaders. So you've gotten a little preview of some of the program. and truly excited. Also want to thank our platinum sponsors again, Halliburton and also GSI Environmental. And thank you again to our amazing presenters today. So thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.